Coming up today, South Korea and France agree to jointly explore new sanctions on North Korea. They also vow to boost military exchanges and defense technology cooperation. As the country tightens its crackdown on illegal Chinese fishing, South Korea issues arrest warrants for 6 Chinese crewmen caught plundering Korean waters. First, in light of what it calls an uncertain job market, the US Federal Reserve keeps interest rates steady, but says it still expects 2 rate hikes this year. Stay tuned for these stories and more. Hello to our viewers around the world. It's 6 a.m. on Thursday, June 16th here in Seoul. Thank you for joining us. I'm Mark Broom. Our top story this morning, President Park Geun-hye held talks on Wednesday with the new commander of U.S. Forces Korea, General Vincent Brooks. Recognizing the severity of North Korea's threats, President Park and General Brooks vowed to focus their efforts on getting Pyongyang to abandon its nuclear weapons. Our Song Ji-sun starts us off.
One basic principle, that of denuclearizing North Korea. That's what President Park Geun-hye highlighted when countering the issue. Meeting with General Vincent Brooks, the new commander of the U.S. Forces Korea and the South Korea-U.S. Combined Forces Command, Park said Pyongyang's continued threats, proven by its advanced nuclear weapons program and testing of SLBMs, are threatening not only the Northeast Asia region, but also the entire world. President Park stressed that a temporary or one-off policy will only make the situation worse, and that Pyongyang's threats must be stopped to denuclearize the regime and set the ground for unification on the Korean peninsula. General Brooks responded that North Korea's threats are a serious challenge that cannot be underestimated. The commander also pledged Washington's military support in assisting Seoul's policy towards Pyongyang with a stronger alliance. Park reaffirmed solidarity by saying that the word team stands for together everyone achieves more, calling for a tight defense condition among the ROK U.S. forces to protect the South Korean people. Song Ji-sun, Arirang News.
South Korea and France will explore the possibility of jointly imposing further sanctions on North Korea in addition to UN Security Council measures. Meeting in Paris on Wednesday, Seoul's Defense Minister Han Min-gu and his French counterpart agreed to consider extra sanctions on Pyongyang, noting the seriousness of the nuclear and missile threats posed by the regime. Both sides will also use their regular Defense Information Exchange meeting to assess the implementation of UN sanctions on the North. In addition, the two ministers also vowed to expand France's participation in military drills conducted in South Korea, including ones that include US troops. South Korea and France also agreed to upgrade their defense industry cooperation through joint research, development and marketing of defense technology. South Korea's top diplomat has slammed North Korea for its fixation with nuclear weapons. Yoon Byung-se made the remarks in Russia this week. He's in the country to win support for Seoul's North Korea policies from an old friend of Pyongyang. Kwon Swa reports.
South Korean Foreign Minister Yoon Byung-se said it's a shame North Korea, which is obsessed with its nuclear weapons development, is continuing its anachronistic acts. He was addressing a bilateral economic forum held in St. Petersburg Tuesday local time. He added North Korea cannot turn back time and will have to realize that the international community is turning its back on the regime. The minister said the world is undergoing revolutionary events, the normalization of ties between the U.S. and Cuba, President Park Geun-hye's first visit to Iran, his own trip to Cuba, and Myanmar's transition from a military government to a civilian one, and he expressed his hope that the winds of change will blow into the Korean peninsula too. Yoon also sought to expand the channels of cooperation between Seoul and Moscow.
During the bilateral foreign ministers' meeting, Minister Sergei Lavrov expressed high expectations for South Korea, calling it a key partner in Asia policies and development in the Russian Far East.
According to an official, Russia has recently begun referring to South Korea as a key partner and that its amicable position on traditional ally North Korea has changed. The official said that in talks earlier this week, Minister Yoon and his counterpart Sergei Lavrov barely touched on the deployment of the U.S. missile defense system THAAD to South Korea, which Russia and China oppose, implying that Russia is more focused on curbing the North's nuclear ambitions. Kwon So-ah, Arirang News.
South Korea has sharply intensified its crackdown on illegal Chinese fishing in recent days after an explosion in the number of boats operating in South Korean waters. Seoul's foreign ministry has even summoned the Chinese ambassador to Korea twice to call for stronger measures against the unscrupulous crews. Kim Hae-sung with the details.
The Korean Coast Guard issued on Wednesday an arrest warrant for 6 Chinese crewmen who are on board of 2 35-ton Chinese vessels. According to the Korean Coast Guard, the military police team, a joint operation by the Korean military, Coast Guard, and UN command forces, seized 2 Chinese shipping boats operating near Incheon on Tuesday. The boats were fishing illegally in Korean waters Tuesday evening. The other 8 members who were also found in the boats will be booked without physical detention. This is the first time that the military police captured Chinese vessels since starting their operation last Friday. And today, Korea's Ministry of Public Safety and Security launched a special task force team deploying 4 warships, 8 speedboats, and 1 helicopter to patrol waters near the northern limit line in the West Sea. The move comes after Seoul reported a growing number of Chinese fishing boats trespassing into the Korean waters. Korea's Ministry of Foreign Affairs also summoned the Chinese ambassador to Korea to call for stronger measures to rein in illegal Chinese fishing boats. Chinese officials said they have been cracking down on illegal fishing activities but face difficulties. Kim Hae-sung, Arirang News.
Turning now to the ongoing investigations into Korea's 5th largest conglomerate, Lotte Group. Following 2 raids at more than a dozen of its business arms, prosecutors are looking to see whether Lotte was involved in illegal transactions among the group's units in Korea and Japan. Prosecutors believe Lotte Chemical illegally transferred funds to a business arm in Japan. Lotte Chemical is suspected of using a separate unit in the process of buying raw materials overseas to inflate prices. This builds on prosecutors' probe of the conglomerate's alleged slush funds and business irregularities. The US Federal Reserve has kept interest rates steady, citing concerns about the uncertain job market in the US and a possible British exit from the European Union. Fed policy makers did tentatively commit to 2 more rate hikes this year, possibly leaving the door open to an increase next month. Fed Chair Janet Yellen said Brexit concerns were a factor in the central bank's decision. The Fed lowered its economic growth forecast for 2016 from 2.2% in March to 2% this week. It also shaved its 2017 projection by 1/10 of a percentage point to 2% as well, and indicated it would be less aggressive in tightening monetary policy after the end of this year. Now, Korea's job market continues to exhibit few signs of improvement, with youth unemployment remaining depressingly high. The outlook for the coming months is not so bright either, as the government pushes through an overhaul of ailing industries. Hang Jie with this report.
Korea's youth jobless rate for the month of May hit an all-time high. For 4 straight months leading up to that, Statistics Korea says the unemployment rate for young people ages 15 to 29 had been hitting record highs in each month from previous years. And the trend is unlikely to improve anytime soon.
The youth employment rate was at 42.7%, which is still not that high. So unemployment has been on an upward trend as well. This has been the trend for a while, and I believe it will continue for some time.
Experts say one of the reasons behind the bleak outlook is a government-led restructuring drive that will result in inevitable job losses, and not just for young people, but in all age groups.
If restructuring proceeds in industries from shipbuilding and shipping to steel, it's natural that massive job losses will occur, as job cuts are the focal point of the restructuring plan, although the government will try to minimize the layoffs.
Local economies are already being hit by the effects of the corporate overhaul. Gyeongsangnam-do province, which has a high concentration of the country's shipyards, saw its jobless rate rise by 1.2 percentage points, even as the country's unemployment rate edged down. Still, employment conditions across the country continue to remain sluggish, with the number of new jobs added last month standing at the 200,000 level for a second straight month. With that, the government is planning to take action to counter any downside risks that could further slow the economy and cast a cloud over the job market. And speculation is mounting that the government might include a budget supplement in its economic policy plan for the second half of this year. 황지혜, Arirang News.
Now to the latest on the emissions scandal surrounding the Korean unit of Volkswagen Korea. It has emerged that the German automaker doctored emissions reports even after Korea's Environment Ministry warned it to clean up its act 5 years ago. Kim Mo-gyun with the details.
Prosecutors revealed that Korea's Environment Ministry required Audi Volkswagen Korea to submit an explanation and an improvement plan on the excessive emission of nitrogen oxide from the carmaker's diesel cars in 2011. This came after the ministry found out that some 8 diesel cars from 6 companies sold in Korea had problems with its gas emissions when tested under normal driving conditions. However, unlike other auto manufacturers, Volkswagen refused to comply with the requirements even after officials from the German headquarters visited Korea to check on the situation. Volkswagen had been putting off with the Environment Ministry's demands until the Dieselgate scandal broke out in the United States last September. On Wednesday, the Seoul Central District Prosecutor's Office resummoned a senior executive of the Korean unit of the carmaker, surnamed Yoon, 2 days after he was first called in to further investigate on why the company decided to ignore the Environment Ministry's requirements. Yoon, who was in charge of the certification process of the local unit, has been summoned as a testifier on Monday, but his position shifted to a suspect on Wednesday. He's under suspicions of allegedly manipulating test emission results and importing unauthorized vehicles to Korea. Prosecutors are reviewing on whether to charge Yoon on accusations of falsifying records, obstruction of justice, and violating the Air Environmental Conservation Act. Kim Mo-gyun, Arirang News.
Now, on a lighter note, the idea of dining alone makes many people pretty uncomfortable, especially here in Korea, where eating is seen as a social activity. But times have changed, and a table for one is no longer the lonely act it once was. Yoon Shin has the details.
In Korea, bonding over dinner or a drink is in the culture, as even one of the most common parting phrases in the country is, "Let's grab a meal sometime." So, to some, the act of dining solo may be uncomfortable or even taboo. But over the past few years, more and more people have taken to the table alone without minding the stares.
It may have been common to see people dining alone at cafes or fast food chains before. But in the nation nowadays, we see more and more single customers at pubs or restaurants.
I often choose to eat alone before I go to work. It's kind of nice that I don't have to plan around someone else's schedule. Besides, I don't really care what others think of me.
We have a big number of single customers here. In fact, the number has been increasing quite constantly.
And going to places without company is not just limited to eating and drinking, as places once seen as exclusively for groups are attracting more solo guests. The number of unaccompanied customers at movie theaters has been growing for the past few years. And according to Statistics Korea, the amount of people who prefer a company by their side has dropped over time in the nation. Although this trend could be attributed to the growing number of single-person households in Korea, experts are saying otherwise.
Slowly drifting away from group-centered culture we as Koreans used to know, individuality and personal rights are prioritized in the nation nowadays. Kids are taught they should be able to do whatever they want without caring too much about others' opinions. And this attitude among the younger generation is a major factor that contributes to the rising number of single-person households.
Always needing company to go to places is now a thing of the past. Going solo seems to be the new social norm, with establishments of all sorts of catering to one person at a time, showing that now, more than ever, being alone does not mean being lonely. 이은신, Arirang News.
Well, that's all we have for now on this Thursday morning here in Seoul. I'm Mark Broom. Thank you, as always, for watching. We'll be back throughout the day with more newscasts. Our next scheduled bulletin coming up at 10 a.m. Korea time. So until then, goodbye.